Welcome, welcome. I want to welcome everybody. This is an opportunity to have a really wonderful conversation together with people across Oregon. And just to really quickly let you know who I am, who is this person? My name is Reverend Rashenda Fairhurst. And I am a member of the Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon board, and I chair the Creation Justice Committee, which is also Oregon Interfaith Power and Light. And those committees and that board are just full of wonderful interfaith colleagues. And so at EMO, even as we intersect into the world, we are also a group of people of faith. And so this conversation will reflect that as we lean in together in a faithful way, um, acknowledging our interrelationships across community with each other, which is kind of like a wonderful way to do it. So, like, think of this as a community square. And we're just really, really glad to see everyone here. So, welcome, welcome. We have a wonderful folks here today as we talk about the right to a healthy environment. And maybe dig down into a little bit of like why that matters and what this could really mean for us. We have five wonderful speakers, and we will introduce them only a little sort of in the video, but we will be dropping more extensive bios in the chat because it's really, you're going to want to take a look, dig into what these people do, these wonderful leaders in this effort for bringing this sort of right of the people forward, right of everybody, men, women, children, siblings, siblings. It's all here in front of us. All we have to do is grasp it. So let me reorient myself here with what we've got in front of us. So the nutshell, we've got at the center of this, as we talk about why this matters and why it is deeply good. We're also going to be talking about what we can do because it's going to take all of us to say, hey, yeah, no, I actually, this is important to me. And there's ways that you can interact publicly that will really, really help communicate that. And one is a march on the 26th. And there is also going to be ways to offer your testimony around your why it matters to you that there is a right to a healthy environment in Oregon, which is kind of amazing that we don't have that, right? What? Of course we have that. In fact, we have that so deeply, we haven't even thought about it. Yeah, we didn't write it down because we never thought we needed to. So here's our opportunity. So Peter, if you can drop into chat, these are your initial links to the March 24th, 26th information for through OCERA, and you'll hear more from OCERA. They are sort of the center organizing force for the right to a healthy environment, and as well as where you can submit your testimony. We're getting those links in at the beginning so you get a look at it, but we're also going to drop them again towards the end. So there's you'll have another chance to take a look after you've heard more. And let's see. So that's what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about a proposed constitutional amendment to the Oregon Constitution that will enshrine, actually say it out loud, that human beings in Oregon have a right to a healthy environment. And it's going to go to the legislature, and we're asking them to give us the chance to put this before the people because this is that important. So I want to check in with Sarah and to see now. Senator Golden will be here with us today, but not exactly sure of his timing. Is he ready to share right now, or shall we proceed and then have him speak a little later?
Yeah, you can go ahead. I let him know that he was speaking at 12:15 based off the planning document I saw.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's excellent. So then I would really love to introduce Andrew Welle. And now Andrew Welle is he's the supervising senior staff attorney for Our Children's Trust. He'll tell you a little bit more about Our Children's Trust, and he's been with them since 2017. He leads legal cases, serving as counsel of record and advising on numerous youth-led constitutional climate cases in state and federal courts. He's argued before numerous state appellate courts for Our Children's Trust. And including in front of the federal district court, the Ninth Circuit, and the United States Supreme Court. And we're going to drop his chat. We're going to drop his chat into his bio into the chat, and then we can, and you can link on that as well to see more about Andrew. But I want to turn it over to Andrew so that he can share with you. And Andrew, we are so glad that you are here.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and for all of you for spending time with us today. Really grateful to have the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about our work at Our Children's Trust and why the codification of the people's right to a healthy environment is so important, given the circumstances that are facing us in Oregon, what that means for the rights of children, and how critical it is to the work that we do at Our Children's Trust to secure constitutional climate justice on behalf of youth and future generations. So as Lucinda mentioned, I'm Andrew Welle. I'm a supervising senior staff attorney with Our Children's Trust. Our Children's Trust is a proud member of the Oregon Coalition Environmental Rights for the Right to a Healthy Environment, which is the bill to codify the right to a healthy environment. And I want to tell you a little bit about why that's so important to our work at Our Children's Trust to secure constitutional climate justice. So to back that up a little bit, I'll tell you a bit more about who Our Children's Trust, or OCT, is. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We were founded in 2010, and we're based in Eugene, Oregon. Although now we've grown substantially, we have staff across the country and actually several internationally as well. And we're really dedicated just to one thing, and that is, as I mentioned, securing constitutional climate justice for youth. But what does that mean? So we're primarily a legal organization and law firm, and lawyers like myself represent young people in courts, in state courts, in federal courts, in courts in foreign countries, and before international treaty tribunals across the world. And really what we do is we sue governments on behalf of youth, challenging policies and actions that worsen the climate crisis and cause harm to the health and safety of youth. And really what we're seeking is recognition and enforcement of their fundamental rights against those policies that harm their health and safety by worsening the climate crisis. So really what we're hoping to do is get judicial recognition and enforcement of their fundamental rights to a safe and livable climate. And that looks different depending on the constitutional rights that are recognized in different constitutions. But really, when the right to a safe and healthy environment is codified in constitutions, it's really the strongest and most effective tool that we can use in our advocacy to protect a livable climate for youth in the face of the climate crisis. So as I mentioned then, the importance of explicitly recognizing the right to a healthy environment, as we're seeking to do through this bill in Oregon's legislature and later ballot initiative, that importance really cannot be overstated to the work that we're doing to secure a safe and livable future for Oregon's youth. And the climate emergency and its impact on health and safety for our children and their futures is the human rights crisis of our time. I think many of us already know that we're seeing the devastating impacts in our communities throughout the state from the impacts of climate change, from deadly heat waves and wildfires, flooding, loss of glaciers, impacts to food security and water security, and other impacts. And pediatricians and scientists tell us that children and youth are the most uniquely vulnerable and disproportionately impacted by the harms of the climate crisis. So for instance, their bodies are less adaptable to regulating heat in our extreme heat and the heat dome, like the one that came in 2021. And they're more vulnerable to pathogens like the ticks that we're increasingly seeing in Southern Oregon creeping their way up across the state. And of course, we know that the impacts of the climate crisis will accelerate with continuing greenhouse gas emissions. So when it comes to the climate crisis, it's really youth who have the most at stake. But when we secure a constitutional amendment that makes the implicit, right, the rights of children to a safe and healthy environment, right? The conditions that are really preconditioned to all of our other fundamental rights, our rights to life and health. When we make that implicit right to a healthy environment explicit, it means that youth and others can hold our government accountable for upholding it to secure climate justice and a livable future. And when we protect the right to a healthy environment in our Constitution, we can enforce it to accomplish real change. So, as I said, codifying this right to a clean and healthy environment is really the strongest level of protection that we can use and the best tool that our Children's Trust has in these legal actions to secure rights for youth. And to give you an example of that, we've litigated in all 50 states across the country, in Canada, Mexico, but particularly in states whose constitution already protects the right to a healthy environment. Our Children's Trust has used those rights to secure landmark legal victories on behalf of youth. And we've forced governments to align their policies with what science dictates is necessary to solve the climate crisis. So, for instance, in Montana, in 2023, we brought what became the first constitutional climate case to go to trial in the United States, a case called Held v. Montana. And we secured a first of its kind legal victory that struck down Montana's pro-fossil fuel statutes as unconstitutional for violating the right to a clean and healthy environment because it was harming youth by worsening the climate crisis. And that landmark victory was recently upheld by the Montana Supreme Court at the end of 2024. So we're still celebrating that victory for youth. Similarly, in Hawaii, there's an explicit right to a clean and healthy environment. And our Children's Trust brought a legal action in Hawaii's courts based on that constitutional provision in a case called Navahine versus Hawaii Department of Transportation. And again, in that case, we secured a landmark settlement that requires the state to eliminate all greenhouse gas emissions from the state's transportation sector by 2045. So we're using these constitutional rights to accomplish real change to secure climate justice for youth. And similarly, if we are able to codify these rights in Oregon's Constitution by explicitly recognizing the right to a healthy environment in our Constitution, we can use that to accomplish real change in Oregon and do our part for Oregon's government to be held accountable to do their part to solve our part of the climate crisis. So when we codify these constitutional rights, it really empowers our path forward to secure children's rights to a safe and livable climate. And of course, that's not the only application of these important environmental rights. They can also be used to protect our water quality, our air quality locally from pollution, and all of the things that we need that's necessary to protect our health and safety. But making these explicit in our Constitution is really the first step to securing those protections. So I'm happy to answer any questions folks have about our work at Our Children's Trust. You can find out more about us at ourchildrenstrust.org. But I'd encourage you to do everything that you can to become involved in this really important effort to codify these important rights in our Constitution. And as part of that, join us in Salem on the 26th for our rally and our press conference and consider testifying on behalf of these important constitutional rights. And with that, I'll turn it back to Resenda.
Yes, yeah. Oh my goodness. So you can hear that we, as living together, people of faith, know we have books of rules how we choose to live together, and there's true also living together as people in a state or people in a nation, and of course we're global, right? Climate change is a global phenomenon. Andrew, we got about in 1 minute, just ask you. You have found yourself in an extremely influential spot where you can really help move this legislation forward. Can you tell us just, is there something about that, why you do this work?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, let me say I am personally very, very excited about the language that we are advocating for and have a chance to codify in Oregon's Constitution. We've worked really hard to make sure that this language is as strong and protective as it can possibly be, learning from lessons from the way that courts have interpreted other rights to a clean and healthy environment. So we've made sure that this right includes a right to clean water, clean air, and to a safe and stable climate system, that it explicitly protects the rights of youth and future generations, and that it not only prevents the government from causing affirmative harm to our right to a safe and stable climate system and clean and healthy environment, but also that it clarifies that the state has affirmative duties to protect our healthy environment from impairment, right? So this is the strongest constitutional protections, if it were codified, out of any state in the country, explicitly recognized in our Constitution, where we could be a leader amongst our nation in securing these rights. The importance of the work that we're doing here, I think, is really a function of what's at stake for our youth. When we look at the harms of the climate crisis, the scientists that we work with in our litigation are telling us that we have a very, very limited amount of time to make sure that we are aligning emissions trajectories to what's necessary to protect a livable world for our youth, and that we need to rapidly eliminate fossil fuel emissions as fast as possible. We also work with experts who are in the fields of engineering and the alternatives to the projects that we rely on currently in fossil fuels. And they tell us that it's actually really economically beneficial for us to transition as rapidly as possible off of fossil fuels, not only to protect the health and safety of youth, but also because clean, renewable energy is actually the most efficient and safest and economically the cheapest and most available technologies that we can use to provide energy for ourselves. So it's really a win-win, not only in terms of avoiding catastrophic harm to our youth, but also in saving folks money at the power meter, and all of it,
Absolutely.
all of it is critically tied to explicitly recognizing the rights of youth and of living generations to a clean and healthy environment.
Yes. Oh my goodness. That's just the right to life. I sort of this interfaith and multi-faith work is all about sort of recognizing the gift of life and honoring that. And we're going to shift now to hear from Senator Jeff Golden, and really, really grateful to him for being here. And as I sort of preparing for this conversation, Senator Golden is he's a dedicated man of the forest. I mean, he left Harvard to go into forest work, to be present in Oregon, to be in the wilderness, and out of that sprung books and awards. And Peter's going to drop his bio in the chat, so I want you to read that. But I'm also noticing today that we had a loss of life event in Jackson County with this recent storm. Douglas County, the dam almost went over the top from this recent storm. And while we know that climate change doesn't cause storms, we do know that they worsen them and make them more frequent. And I just couldn't be gladder for somebody who represents us, who has a sense of how precious and sacred, I use the word sacred, but how precious it is to have an understanding and a care for the natural world. And with that, I want to turn it over to the senator. Welcome and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm so grateful for what OCERA has done so far. And Wednesday is a pretty exciting day, and I think I'd like to use my time to talk about the Wednesday hearing and maybe some practical things to consider. We could have a longer conversation on why we all do what we do here. But OCERA, I think, is responsible for bringing this to the legislature with more velocity and potential than has ever happened before. So thanks for that. We will achieve what has been our primary goal with this legislation, which is to have a full, likely high-profile public hearing on the bill. And yes, that's this Wednesday at 1:00 in the Senate Rules Committee. And the good news is that Senator Jama, the chair, has agreed to devote the entire hearing to this one bill. And that's unusual this session. We have way too many bills getting crammed into too few hearings. And I asked for that. And as I looked at the agenda for Wednesday, and that is still the case, nothing's been added. It's possible because of deadlines and whatnot that something would be added, but I'm expecting the full time, which is terrific. So I wanted to make some invitations or suggestions about the hearing. This is super important. We have no way of knowing if this if there will be any other official meeting in the legislature than Wednesdays about this. The leadership makes a decision after the public hearing about what then moves forward. Most bills get a public hearing and that's the end of it. But we've gotten to that, we've achieved that. So I can't overstate the importance of that hearing. So my thoughts on it. You can testify remotely, and of course you can submit written testimony. Neither of those are as effective as actually coming to the hearing. I think we all understand, or rather assess people's commitment to an issue a little bit about in terms of whether they show up or testify remotely. If you can't come or it's really inconvenient, do testify remotely. But I think people who are in the room just implicitly get a little deeper hearing than people remotely. That's just kind of a reality. Um, it is very likely the testimony will be limited to 2 minutes. It depends entirely on how many people sign up to testify. We do the math at the beginning of the meeting to see how much we can give to people. I'm afraid I have had some hearings in my committee this year where I gave people a 1 minute limit, which I hate to do. We tell people, and it's true, submit as much as you want in written testimony, but I would not be honest if I were to say we all read all the written testimony all the time. We can't, basically. So if you want to be heard for sure, speak at the hearing, again, preferably in person, and if you can't, remotely. But the most likely limit will be 2 minutes. And what that means is people really have to front load their comments. Too many times I hear people telling they'll use 30 seconds on their credentials and all the involvements in organizations, and then a minute or a minute and a half on how long they've been in Oregon and experience that have shaped their perspective. And the bell rings at 2 minutes and they haven't made their main point. So, I love the literary stuff and the stories, but you got to get your main point in fast. And I would say try to don't write to 2 minutes. Don't time it at 2 minutes. Time it to a minute 30, a minute 40, because people speed read to get as much as they can in 2 minutes, and that's just not very effective. We don't really follow it. Write short, write to a minute 30, minute 40. Now, it's possible the 2 minute limit won't be there, but it's probable that it will. Do some coordination. I'm sure, knowing OCERA, I'm sure you're doing this, but we want to, there are multiple points that can be made. And what we don't want is hearing the same point from 40 people and have other points neglected. So do some coordination on that score. And then some opposition points. The main points, predictably, to this kind of thing are that you might want to consider addressing in some fashion. I wrote down 3. This doesn't really mean anything. It's just nice words, virtue signaling, won't have any real effect. And I think Andrew spoke in contradiction to that point, but you'll hear it. Probably stronger, a bigger challenge for us is this is anti-business. It'll hurt the economy. It'll constrain business. It will get businesses to go elsewhere, all the states that don't have this in the Constitution. It'll be economically damaging to the state. And the other is this will flood the courts with lawsuits, primarily against government, and government's got its hands full now and doesn't have money to litigate. And those are the 3. If you want to choose to, as you coordinate, you might want to see if somebody wants to anticipate those criticisms a bit. So what happens after this? So the goal here is, as I say, a high-profile hearing. And I got to say, when this is proposed, this I think you all know is a very steep uphill climb, getting this passed. And there are really two reasons to introduce bills. One is to actually get them to be law, and the other is to elevate conversations. Just about every significant bill that gets passed is a multi-session project. Interest builds over time. Sometimes you strike lightning and it can get a big bill passed the first time out, first session, but that's really rare. You tend to build on it session after session. So when I was approached, I really wanted to have a very significant conversation, hopefully that media would cover. And this is a conversation we have to have. We're talking about changing a paradigm. Our business as usual model is not preparing for the future and is unfair to future generations. It just is. That's our whole structure. The constitutional rights to property um, don't look forward to future generations. So to me, this is a conversation with the potential of awakening people to that, to say, are we doing what we want to do writ large? Or is our system, our structure, our constitution taking us to the kind of future we want? Because, we don't have an opportunity to ask and think about those questions. And the legislature and the media it gets is a important opportunity for that. So that's why we did this. And also, as the leaders know, this is a twin track strategy. Obviously, it has to go to the voters. All constitutional amendments do. So simultaneously, we're trying to get the legislature to refer it with this bill while organizers are, starting to think about an initiative petition where the people put it on the ballot. And one can reinforce the other. We hope that if this public hearing is all we get, that it boosts awareness and the initiative drive later. So that's the idea. What will happen? I don't know for sure. I want to be really realistic about whether this bill will move beyond the public hearing stage. There's real challenges with that. And I would say the biggest one, having talked to my leadership, is a concern that past measures kind of like this have often started out with a lot of public approval, according to the polls, then attract enormous, well-financed opposition and lose, sometimes by large margins. And the concern in my leadership is having as sort of an official finding that Oregonians don't care about environmental rights. And what are the implications for that as we argue about future legislation and the strength of regulations and that kind of thing. So that's a real factor. People can have an extended conversation and honest people can differ about all that. But I want to be really clear that the primary challenge here isn't about the merits. Is this good policy? Do we want an amendment like this? It's about concern that it win if it goes to the ballot, and what kind of finances are behind it. Quite likely that many million could get spent in opposition to it. So I want to give you the political reality of all that. I am delighted that we're getting a full Rules Committee hearing on this, and we'll ask. The quality of the hearing and the testimony could have some influence about whether it moves forward. I don't really know. But I have been made aware of the concern that I just described. But we will have achieved our first goal with a good hearing on Wednesday. I'm really glad that it's happening.
That's so helpful. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about the Psalms are so full of nature imagery, and you talk about it being a steep climb for all these factors, some of them historical, but the words of the Psalm that the valleys will be made high and the mountains will be made low. And there is a path to this. The mountain can be made low as we together bring our voices and our hearts and our spirit to this work. So thank you for that, for pitching that as we have to attend to this. We have to attend to this and what we need to do next. So thank you so much, Senator, for being here, for lending your voice, and for all you've done to champion the natural world creation and Oregon's people and economy in Oregon. Thank you. You're muted. Senator, you're muted if you want to unmute.
I wanted to thank you. It's a privilege to be involved in all this. I'm running to another meeting and hope to see some, if not many of you on Wednesday. Onward. Take good care.
Thank you. Thank you. That's marvelous. So I wanted also, as we continue moving through our conversation today, that Peter Fargo is here. He is also with Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. And if I'm not quite able to get to you in the chat, Peter, he is a co-host in every way, and the Creation Care Coordinator at Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. So please feel free to send any questions or anything you need his way as well. At this point, I would really love to, and I'm really very, very glad to introduce Mel Martin. Mel Martin, Melissa Martin is her full name, but Mel Martin is a Florida attorney living in Eugene, Oregon, and she is a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy and served as a commissioned U.S. Marine Corps officer, retiring as a staff judge advocate in 2024. When I talk about multiple pathways, this is what I mean. We are a great and wonderful people together in Oregon. So she earned her law degree from Barry University of Law. And I'm going to ask Peter to just drop the rest of that bio in the chat so everybody can see and read that, because I want to move right to Mel and hear from her. She is a key leader in the OCERA work of bringing this amendment forward, cultivating that language, and gathering voices and sharing about this. So I'm going to turn it over to her so we can hear directly from her. Go ahead, Mel.
Thank you so much, Regina. And I just, on behalf of the team, it's really an honor and blessing to be working in this particular mission, really. And it's inspiring just to take a few steps back and take a look at what it is and the importance and critical nature of this moment in our future history, right? So I just wanted to say a few words regarding, really to answer some of the questions. First, why this matters to me personally, as a quasi intro of, who the heck am I? But in my opinion, it's, nature has always been my connection to truth, if that makes sense. My core identity and like my very being kind of stems from my time in nature growing up in Florida, whether it was the beaches or the springs or whatnot. It's where I received all my epiphanies and life lessons. And I really have been able to feel the reality of the connection with God or source or whatever you would like to name that or call it. But it was just that sense of pure unconditional love that you can get from nature, right? So it's always been a part of me, and I'm sure it rings true with you all. But I didn't get involved in advocacy or activism until after I retired from the Marine Corps. And I returned to Florida hoping to teach my boys how to fish, all my fishing secrets in my the fishing hole that I grew up on. So I came back, and that the particular water body was coughing up blood. It suffers massive fish kill, mortality events, routine algal blooms, and it was just mistreated for decades. And so that's when I got into things, and I taught myself quite a bit. Long story short, I am a big believer of this rights-based approach, and especially through the constitutional amendment process for environmental protection. It's really the best way forward. It gives environmental protection the highest legal protection we can possibly give. And, you know, especially where there might be issues of undue influence by special interests, powerful special interests, and that varies from state to state, but it's unfortunately prevalent just about everywhere. And this really nips that issue in the bud because it makes the policymaking and regulation of environmental protection a political matter. It now depends on, once it's in, it'll depend on what the admissible evidence would show. So it's you know, based on the best available science, which is where things should be, right? So why this should matter to everyone, it's really beyond the intuitively obvious. There's of course clear and robust scientific consensus that conserving our natural resources, our water and air ecosystems, and the climate system, you know, the climate systems affecting all the above, it's necessary for everyone today and tomorrow. And our legal framework really should reflect that. So when you think about it, and I think Rashenda and Andrew both mentioned, you know, the right to life and liberty means nothing without the underlying rights to these environmental life support systems that allow us to enjoy every other right. So what this amendment boils down to is just a couple things. That one is the basic reason for it. No one should have the right to poison another person. No one should have the right to hurt another life, right? That's intuitively obvious. But again, it's not reflected clearly in our legal framework. So the second point is what this amendment does, it really, in essence, creates clarity in the government's duty to conserve and maintain those natural resources that we need for now and in the future. So it's a very important thing that has to be done if we want to see any systemic change. And it should, as it's a top-down type of approach, everything else will be informed by it. And especially as Oregon updates its regulatory infrastructure from the 1800s and early 1900s, it's a perfect time to have a nice beacon in place to make everything nice and uniform and crucially effective to safeguard public safety and health through the environment. So there's plenty of information about a lot of it on our website, OCERAunited.org. But if there's any questions, you can also find the email contact on that website. So very quickly, I wanted to give you an idea of where we are in the process itself. So I'm going to share just a few slides. Let's see. Sorry about that. All right, so
I'm confirming that we can see those, so they are visible and good.
terrific. Awesome, thank you. So as you all may have heard, it's the SJR 28 is the vehicle bill that the Right to a Healthy Environment is going through, and it's currently in the Senate Rules Committee. We have lots of sponsors. We have 6 co-chief sponsors and 16 co-sponsors, which is a pretty healthy amount of support in the legislature already, 11 in each house. And that's beautifully symmetrical. I don't know why that happened, but right now we're focused on the Senate, and we're just down to needing 2 more to have a clear majority in the Senate for the floor vote. So these are the 4 senators that we're hoping to convince to at least let us know that they plan to support it when it comes to the floor vote. And of course, as Senator Golden may have mentioned, Senator Wagner, the Senate President, does have the power to send it to the floor for a vote or not to send it to the floor for a vote. And he's I believe, one with a concern about the risk. So if and when you can communicate with Senator Wagner, please let him know it's worth the risk for many, many reasons. And if you need any help with your communication to any of these legislators, let us know. There's, like I said, there's lots on our website, but for March 26th, a very quick understanding of the plan is it's a big day of action. In the morning, we're going to be dropping off literature at various legislators' offices. If there's where there's a meeting, we can attend, but by and large, it's just a stop in to update the the legislators that are already on board, to thank them, to update the legislators that are not completely on board, but they're interested, so that's the morning attention. And then at 1 p.m. is the big hearing. So we're asking anyone who will be able to show up to meet us outside that room at 12:30. So 30 minutes so we can pass any word, do last minute detail type of things. And then following that, about 3 p.m., we're going to be on the green, north side to talk about big inspirational topics. So important, if you would like to learn more, it's on our website, OCERAUnited.org. There's a registration form if you're able to participate in anything on that day in Salem with us. And we're really there to impress the legislature and media. We want to convince the legislators to pass it through the Senate. And we're going to continue building out the structure and support for this initiative. What you can do already, in addition to talking with legislators, is to help create the buzz within your own networks, both personal networks and any organizations that you might be a member of or affiliated with. Please let them know that this is a critical window of opportunity that honestly closes pretty soon. And as that window closes, we need to be sure that any legislator that should know does know. So don't feel afraid to tag them, courteously and respectfully, of course, on social media where you think it might be appropriate. And just get everyone you can on board when you can and then however you can. So I guess I'm not sure how much time I have left, but
we're kind of right there.
Okay, yeah, so I guess the last sentence I'll say is as far as moral imperatives go and how to show up in joy for that is really to try to understand that, as the science grows, so grows our moral imperative, of course. So there's a whole bunch of science that really points us to this necessary action, not just now, but effectively now. And just to focus on things that give you joy, because love is where the power is at. Fear detracts from it. And where fear is, there's distraction and depression and despair and anger and all that stuff. Do your best to carve that stuff away from your life and your attention. All right. And focus on things that you can do through the channel of love, which is extra power, turbo power to do great things. And I hope to see you all in Salem on March 26th and continue the conversation with you. So thank you for the time.
Thank you so much. And I want to also, like, Mike, let's see, Mike Allen put a wonderful comment in the chat about, starting a conversation at the local level as well. Approach your local newspaper and say, I care about this, and talk about it in your faith community. Ask the pastor, or if you're the pastor, share a psalm. The natural world is everywhere. I'm not going to go into that. We don't have time, but because you've read the good books yourself, depending on your faith tradition, and you're seeing the good work here. So I want to thank Mel so much for being here. She's going to still be here if you have a question for her in the chat. And I ask your just patience, because we're going to make room here for our speakers, and that's the most important thing we're doing, is hearing each other right now. So I'm really, really grateful for that. I want to introduce now Reverend Mark Knutson, who is his reputation precedes him in every way. I again will invite Peter to put his full bio in the chat, but just quickly, he is the pastor of Augustana Lutheran Church in Portland, Oregon, and has been the pastor there since 1995. And it's a multi-congregational congregation that has been growing in the heart of the city. I loved this expression here, the heart of the city. He has served on many local and national boards and spoken as a keynote speaker, and served on really important foundations and boards, including Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, and taught and really brings faith forward together with taking action for the sake of ourselves, our communities, and an act of faith. And so I want to turn it over now to Reverend Dr. Mark Knutson. And I believe, Mark, you need me to create you as a co-host. So are you planning to share screen? Oh, you're muted.
No, I'm not. I'm just I'll hold my props up as I go. Okay. Ruchenda and Peter, thank you so much for putting this together, and for everybody on this call. A lot of familiar faces, and it's a honor to be you. I'm starting my timer on my clock so I can be done on time so you can have some discussion. But for me, I grew up in Oregon. I've lived in Chicago. I did national work out of Chicago for the Lutheran Church, did my seminary work in the Bay Area for 4 years, did my doctoral work in Washington, D.C. So I've been around the country in many places, but I grew up in Oregon, and I grew up in a family very activist, large family, 8 of us, 2 parents, mother, father are incredibly active. My mother was an educator, a teacher. She's a Fulbright scholar. And my dad was a pastor in Portland, St. Mark's. And I learned early on, you're actively engaged in government as a person of faith. You're engaged in things that change laws for the sake of people. At the same time, you're doing the hands-on work to be with people in suffering and pain, or in challenges like we're facing right now with the creation. And so it's part of a lifetime. I was really fortunate. Mel, I heard your stories about the coast in Florida. You know, I was from a big family, so we didn't fly anywhere for vacations. And so what they did is they bought a little beach cabin in Cannon Beach when I was 3 years old. And so every summer I got to take off my shoes after school got out and be on the beach all summer long and just be in the creation. And it's a beautiful area. And so we surfed, we paddleboarded, we ate and slept and read. You know, that was about it. No TVs, nothing else. And so the creation is ingrained in who I am as a human being. If you go to Cannon Beach today and stand at Haystack Rock and look back at the land, you'll see lots of overbuilding, right? You'll see one green space there. It's called Inspiration Point. My mother took that on and raised $500,000 to buy the only green space left in Cannon Beach and make it a passive park. And she also led the way in saving 140 acres of rainforest up behind Cannon Beach. So, you know, early childhood education to activism around the environment is part of who we are and our faith traditions. And for me, you know, when the beaches were going to be privatized, me and my friends at 15 kind of worked the beach at night in Cannon Beach. And I won't tell you what we did. We kind of removed some barriers that were trying to make the beach private. Then Tom McCall came and did that next step. So I come from that idea that you're activists in a good way. And it's always got to be a high road of love. Can't condemn anybody. High road of love is key to what we do. I just want to say, fast forward, their first Earth Day was in high school. We had great teachers, and we got out there and we did actions around Earth Day. And so teenagers, you know, you're activists. Democracy's at work. And we really believe that so strongly. In 1980, when I was still on the coast, I ran for the state legislature as a Democrat. I actually won the primary. That's all of Clatsop County. I was in my 20s, yeah, Clatsop, Columbia, half of Columbia and half of Washington. I wasn't supposed to win the Democratic primary. On my brochure, it says, this is 1980. Solar, wind, geothermal power is the way to go. Don't give away the right-of-ways to the railroad tracks. Use that for bike paths. And all that was in there. And I can show you someday. But I lost. I lost in the Reagan landslide. I wasn't supposed to win, but I almost won. I lost by 2%. Didn't take any money from anybody. But we walked the whole community. What I found is rural Oregonian. They were we're going to close down the nuclear power plant. We were the only county in the state who voted to pass it because we all went door to door to every farm, every locale. And that's what democracy is. And so I'm excited to see how this flows through. I hope the legislature moves to the ballot. If not, I know Peter's thinking an initiative and others, and I'm all for that if we have to go that route. Finally, I'm going to say, as words of introduction, I'm only 3 minutes in, so I've got plenty of time. I did churchwide national work for the Lutheran Church. And so I idea that environmental care and justice has been part of my DNA all the way through everything I've done. So I was doing churchwide work. We put out a piece called Youth and Peacemaking with the Presbyterians. It's the most used resource from around 20-some thousand youth groups around the country. Peacemaking around racial issues, peacemaking around human sexuality, peacemaking with the earth. And we started Project Green with the University of Michigan with young adults around the country, working with young adults around the world, testing water to make sure their waters are clean, putting international pressure out there. As part of that, I got invited to the first ever, or one of the first White House conferences on the environment. Al Gore hosted at the Presidio in 1994. And there were only 3 of us there who were identified people of faith out of 375 environmental leaders. And it was the first conference from the White House to be beamed around the earth using the internet. So we got feedback. For 2 or 3 nights at the cocktail parties, people asked, well, why are you here as a Lutheran pastor? We know you're doing national work and da-da-da. Or the Jesuit from Virginia or the Episcopalian from Houston. And we said, because it's ingrained in who we are. It's our faith traditions in the creation. It's not just the new movement. It's part of who we're called to be. So the third night of this, and some of you heard the story before, you had an ambassador from Mozambique came, and he addressed us that night, all 350 of us, and said, the environmental crisis is a spiritual crisis. That's how he began. And I heard Bernice King at another event we did say the racial crisis is a spiritual crisis. These brokenness of relationships, whether it's with the earth or with one another, they're deeply ingrained in who we are as people of faith to work for justice and peace, which means right relationship. So it is a spiritual issue. I have no problem defining this as that, because as I was hearing my colleagues state earlier, Scripture, the Hebrew Scriptures, the Quran, the New Testament, creation is all over it. All the images of well-being have to do with the creation. The streams will flow in the deserts, not to flood, but to bring life. The tree of life in the book of Revelations, for the healing of the nations, it says the river of life will flow through the heart of the city and on either side of the trees of life, and the fruit of the tree is for the healing of the nations. That's what this is all about. It's deep and wide. We are so fortunate in Oregon right now that our interfaith work is so ingrained in who we are. Muslim, Jew, Hindu, Native American spiritual leaders, Sikh, all the stuff we're doing around immigration right now. We've got a cross-section working on that. Measure 114, the gun violence, all connected. But the interfaith movement was incredible. And we brought our scripture to it. We brought King's 6 principles of nonviolent direct action. And we brought organizing with young people being at the core. And I can't say enough how important this is. That's my background. As a national director of youth ministries for the Lutheran Church, and I'm still doing that to this day. But that our young people see an opportunity not to just be afraid and to say we can't do a thing, but to say we can do something. And so whether this becomes a ballot initiative by this legislature or one we put on together with youth have to be at the core of this, because they bring an energy and a passion, and it's their life before them. And we hope, 50 years, 100 years from now, the children of the earth will call us blessed rather than curse us for taking no action. And that's biblical as well. Just a quick, another reason is I'll show you a picture of my son and can you see that? My son and my grandson and my granddaughter, Nikki. So they're all, they went on, they're Wharton grads, they've met there. And he's a vice president of investment with a large company, and his portfolio is green investments. So here's a young man, grew up in the city of Portland, goes to Germany and rides green tractors in a little German village. So where do you invest in green energy? And she works for Netflix. But the little guy, Nico, has his fists in the air 1 week. So that's why we're doing this. She has little fists in the air. Nico means freedom for the people. And that's what we're doing this for. He's ready to march now at 4 months old. And our young people are as well. So I think as people of faith, we capture the imagination of Oregonians. We put our faith right to the core of it. If you've heard this before, if you took every reference to justice and peace, the creation, how we're called to keep the creation, not to destroy or dominion, but to keep it, which means, God bless you and keep you. It means take care of you. We're called as stewards to care for the creation. It's our lifeblood, and we are related to it as well. So if you were to take everything about justice, peace, the creation out of this Bible, you'd end up with a little tiny Bible, maybe about that size, And so often in America, we take out all the scripture that has to do with justice and peace, the care of the creation, the care of one another, and we can come at this as people of faith using scripture not to beat people head over it, but say this is who we are. This is who we've been created to be, and everyone's a child of God, even the ones we disagree with. And that's a powerful message if you use that. And so I'm getting close to my time. I got 1:20 left. But I'm so thrilled to be part of what you're all doing together. It's a lifetime engagement, and we have much more to be about. Measure 114, we just got approved by the Court of Appeals, and that was 5,000 volunteers around the state doing. We were told many times it cannot be done. It cannot be done, and we got it on the ballot. And once we got on the ballot, others came alongside. Of course, the opposition rose. It can be done. And what I'm finding with teenagers is they're talking about that. Do you remember they said when we stood in the corner in Northeast Portland getting signatures, we made it happen. We made it happen in Junction City. We made it happen in Roseburg. We made it happen in Cannon Beach. So our young people can claim this as a learning that stays for a lifetime. And so I'm really, I can't talk enough about the engagement of the broader community. And to me, every election is not only about winning, it's also about education. Because if we do it right, we are constantly educating one another about how we all are so dependent on this. And I'm thrilled by that. One closing comment. I was speaking at the Burgerville rally to start their strike, all these young adults. And we're on Holiday Park by Lloyd Center. We're going to march to the Burgerville. This is 5-6 years ago. And I was the last speaker. They had state representatives, they had elected leaders from Portland, and other, labor leaders. They had me go last. All I did was quote scripture. Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. I said, what does the Lord require us but do justice, love kindness, while humbly with God, love one another, love the Creator who created everything. And by the time I got done, they were all cheering. And about 5 millennials or Z's came up to me and said, Reverend, that was an excellent speech. I said, all I did was quote scripture. And they said to me, you have an unfair advantage in public speaking. So claim our traditions, claim that calling. The Lutheran Church put out a piece on the care of creation in 1993. I was part of the team for that. We talked about global warming then. We were talking about sustainability and changing things. That was 30 years ago. So we have work to do. Thank you all. I'm honored to be here. You can all speak way better than I can on this, but I'm just honored to get to spend a few moments with you. Thank you.
Amen and amen. Woo! From my tradition. Yes, the Psalms are shared by many traditions, and there's the sacred poetry and song, of course, spans even it brings hearts of community together. So thinking again about the valleys will be made high, and there will be a view of those beautiful trees, the growing lush and full of fruit, and the flowing of the clean waters, and the people will rejoice with all of creation with them. And there's a reason that's in there, because we have to know that's what we can have. We just have to do it. That's it. That's it. Anyway, thank you so much, Reverend Mark. Absolutely, Rev, just so glad you're here to share that word with us. Absolutely marvelous. I want to I'm muted, apologies. Shift again. It's so hard to move from one of these. We have so many good people to share today. And I want to introduce Jeff Hammarlund. Jeff Hammarlund, I actually had the honor of working with on the Creation Justice Committee. He is a semi-retired professor of energy and climate policy at Portland State University, where he taught graduate and professional development courses for 30 years, co-directed a series of major conferences on the Northwest energy future. And he has advised everybody from governors to presidents. And again, we'll drop, oh, perfect. Peter has already dropped his bio in the chat. That's fantastic. And I want to turn it over to Jeff. He's our last speaker, and really, really glad that he's here and willing to share with us. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Reshinda, and what an inspiring hour. My goodness. So I do often tell people that I'm a retired, I'd like to begin saying I'm a retired professor of climate and clean energy policy who clearly does not understand the concept of retirement. And amongst the many things I'm doing these days is working with the strategy team of OCERA. So I get to work with Mel in that context. I'm also, as Reshinda mentioned, I'm on the Creation Justice Committee at the Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. And I still do a lot of stuff at the national level too. I'm on a number of Democratic National Committee, Climate Council, and various things like that. Of course, right now in Washington, D.C., our focus is just defense, given the current administration. So I've been focusing much more of my time on here in the state. And I heard about this concept that became OCERA, became the Environmental Rights Amendment, actually from Peter Fargo, who's on my right corner there in the screen right now. I have heard and appreciated his enthusiasm. I didn't understand it. I needed to do my own research. I'm a social scientist. I needed to go back and check the facts. I did meet with Myra Van Rosten, I asked Peter to actually include her book in the chat here. She wrote this wonderful book on the Green Amendment, and I met with folks at Our Children's Trust, etc. And basically, the more I learned, the more I researched about this, I became ultimately so convinced that this is probably the most important piece of legislation that I've worked on in my lifetime. This is foundational. This is fundamental. This will allow the other bills that we all care about and that we all support, dealing with energy and environment and climate issues, to actually be followed by the agencies, by the governments that are supposed to do this. And that's so important. I have, as I mentioned, I used to teach energy and environmental policy. I have around 2,000 former students who are working in this field. They are my superpower. It's not me, it's those students. And a number of them work at state agencies and local government agencies. And when they heard about this amendment, they said, Jeff, please get involved in this, because we would love to be able to do what we're supposed to do under state law. We'd love to do what we're supposed to do under regulations or at the local level, but we can't, because we don't have the funding, we don't have the budget, we're given different priorities. We don't get to do what we're supposed to do. If you get this amendment passed, we'll actually get to do what we're supposed to do. And they're okay, I got it. This is why we need to do this sort of amendment. And I think it's just really, really important. I'm looking forward to the 26th. I'm going to be there with Spades. We're getting youth involved, and some of the other folks, Welle and Linda and others from OCERA, have been doing a great job of organizing those events. I'm so thankful that Senator Jamba has given us the time. He's one of our co-sponsors. He's right up there, rarely understands why this is so important, especially from an environmental justice perspective. And so I think we have a real shot. Yes, Senator Wagner has some concerns. I get that. We don't have $7 million in the bank. We're all volunteers, but if we can get this passed, then I think we will be getting some funding support. We just have to go this step by step, and this is the very next step. So I know we're running out low on time, Rashinda. So that's my biggest pitch, and I can stop there if you'd like.
I think in a lot of ways, it would just be helpful to folks to know that everybody's time is precious, and organizing is about starting on time and ending on time. So your grace in letting us make sure that we had real time to hear from these incredible people organizing around this effort. I am grateful to all of you. I want to drop, Peter's going to drop again all those links I promised you, how to put testimony in, where to find out more information about the March 26th event. And I think you've heard today why all this is so important, as we take that uphill climb that Senator Golden talked about, and we start bringing it down a little till it becomes a walk through this beautiful forest. And we emerge on the other side, celebrating, maybe throwing around some eco glitter, something like that, to really celebrate. So be there on the 26th. I want to close us with a prayer, a short prayer. Sometimes those can go long, but mine won't. But I also want to make sure that any one of our speakers, if they feel like there needs to be a point of clarification before we stop, I want to give you a chance to make sure if we've said anything or misspoken anything, that we clarify anything that's needed. Okay, then we look good to go. And so my prayer will be from the Psalm 104, which I love, and I never like to miss out an opportunity. In this book, the word for the divine one is translated as Lord, but I'm going to hold that as the divine one. The divine one, you have done so many things, and you have made them all so wisely. The earth is full of your creations, and then there's the sea, wide and deep, with its countless creatures, all living things, both small and large. We are among those living things, small and large. May we be blessed for this work. May we pour our spirit and our hearts into this work and take it to our communities and our churches and raise the call that all of us were born beautifully and are called into caring for our beautiful earth. So let it be so. Amen, and bless you all. Thank you for being here, and thank you to all our speakers today, and Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon for all its great work. And OCERA, oh my goodness, and Mark, oh my gosh, everyone, our Children's Trust, the Senator, this is a good group. My goodness, you have landed in a good place today, so thank you. And yeah, and with that, what I do is I hit the off button, and I always say that in advance because it always feels so abrupt. We don't get to linger in the parking lot. We don't get to forget our purse and run back to the auditorium and grab our coats. We're just off, but this recording will be available, and all of us are available too. And you know where to be on the 26th. So, you will find yourself in good company. So, amen, and thank you all.